party for. Because it's not a party until something gets broken. Only on Nintendo GameCube. Rated E for everyone.
The GameCube era was weird. If you hold Z while starting up the console, you hear this squeaking followed by a baby's laugh. In the first town you visit in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, there's a fucking noose in the center. You know, where they hang people. In a Mario game, Nintendo, the family-friendly company, accidentally made one of the most competitive games of all time. And it was amazing. But it was such an un-Nintendo move that with the next game in the series, they basically made it the opposite. Much slower, much floatier, and it has tripping in a fighting game. For a little over a decade, we were used to Mario being in the Mushroom Kingdom and doing his thing to save Princess Peach, but now he's on vacation in a beach resort and has a water jetpack that can talk, and also I'm supposed to feel something towards it, and there's really bad voice acting too. And it's also my favorite 3D Mario. Star Fox became Zelda, Zelda went with a crazy new and beautiful art style, Donkey Kong became Guitar Hero, Kirby had a Metroidvania on the Game Boy Advance, Pikmin was born, Metal Gear Solid got a full-ass remake which has never been ported to any other console, but this remake is divisive amongst fans for worse voice acting and new corny cutscenes. It's kinda hard to imagine a cutscene that's too corny for a Metal Gear Solid game, but apparently they exist in this game. Unlike the Super Nintendo and the N64, the GameCube didn't launch with a Mario game, it launched with a freaking Luigi game. Not only was Luigi the star, but the setting was very un-Nintendo. The whole game takes place in a spooky haunted house. It's genuinely one of my favorite games ever, but of course it's not scary, it's Nintendo. But if you want a scary game, then there's the Nintendo published and at one point Nintendo owned Eternal Darkness, a genuine horror adventure game. Another game stranded on the GameCube, but loved by fans as one of the best in the genre. Eternal Darkness might be one of the earliest examples of a horror game breaking the fourth wall to really get under the player's skin. Unfortunately, the only way to play it today is to emulate it or fork over a lot of money. It's really crazy that Nintendo published and once owned a horror game, and I don't know why they let it die. Speaking of crazy, what if I told you Nintendo published one of the greatest RPGs and greatest games ever made, which 17 years later has never left Japan? Well, when you consider how there's a group of magical people who have an androgynous and drag-inspired appearance who are incredibly important to the plot, also clear criticism towards capitalism, animal abuse played up for comedic effect, and an almost biblical type story where humans prove that no matter what, we will always sin. Fuck! Kids were playing this? Kids were playing this. That's awesome. Double Dash is still the weird one in the Mario Kart series, having two people on one cart in actual co-op. It's no wonder why so many people still say this is the best in the franchise. This idea has never been done again. There was also a game about a robot who cleans and is trying to help this little girl who wants to be a frog and her parents are getting divorced. But people love this game and swear it's great, and much like Eternal Darkness, you can't play it off the GameCube unless you pay a lot of money or emulate it, and it makes no sense why Nintendo just didn't try to recapture that charm. Capcom for some reason made a big deal about the Capcom 5, which were 5 games that were going to be exclusive for the GameCube. But one of those games sucked, another got cancelled, another was and none of them stayed exclusive except for the one that sucked. Dude, one of those 5 games was Resident Evil 4. Can you imagine if they stayed true to their word and GameCube was the only place to play Resident Evil 4? It also has a fucking chainsaw controller. Also, Shinji Mikami, director of Resident Evil 4, said that he would chop off his own head if it ever went onto another console. Then, like a decade later, he apologized for Resident Evil 4 ever leaving the GameCube in the first place. Kind of strange. There was also 4 Swords where you needed like 4 Game Boy Advances and 3 friends to actually play the game. The GameCube era was weird, but if you can't figure out the common thread between all these tangents, put on some glasses and maybe read a book once in a while. It's pretty obvious. Most of these games were either good, great, or amazing. The GameCube was the last Nintendo console without the G word everyone likes to use, a gimmick. It didn't have 2 screens, it didn't have motion controls, it didn't have 3D, a cheap tablet, or portability. It was just a video game console. All of the weirdness was put into the games, and I really like that. I'm not gonna say it was their best console, I really gotta sit back and think about it. But I will say that when you line them up all together, nothing else in Nintendo's history was quite like the GameCube era. Thank you for your time. Peace.